Sawadee-kap. Hello and welcome to Daily Wisdom, Walking the Path with the Buddha. Today is our group learning program, and I'll be sharing with you Chapter 8 from our book, Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment. This chapter is titled Transforming the Three Poisons, Craving, Anger, and Ignorance. This is where you're going to be able to understand the three high-level problems that the Buddha discovered in the mind and the solutions to those. It's by uprooting the three poisons or the three unwholesome roots or the three fires that the mind actually experiences enlightenment. So welcome. I'm pleased to see all of you guys in class today, whether you're joining on Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or whether you're listening to this on one of the replay sites. Welcome to everyone. If you'd like to join for meditation, we start each one of our classes with meditation. So I'm going to do some chanting to ease us into the meditation. Then there's going to be some guidance where I'm just guiding you in the meditation for a period of time. Then there's going to be a period of time where it's just quiet and we're all meditating together. Then we're going to come out of the meditation with some more chanting. And that's where I'll start today's class, helping you to understand the three poisons, what these are, and how to uproot them out of the mind. So if you'd like to join for meditation, you might decide to take a position either seated, lying, or standing. These work really well for online learning. Again, I'm going to do some chanting to ease into the meditation, and you guys are welcome to join in if you like. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakeva Otang Mahakavanhang Apivateyami Savakato Mahakavata Tammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakavato Sāvaka Saṅkho Sanghang Namami Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti Piso Mahakava Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vicacaranang Sammuno Sakato Rokavitu Anutero Purisa Dhamma Sati Satatawa Manusanang Oto Bhagavati. Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath, a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then whenever you get to it, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathing gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. อะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธมหะเกวาโอตังมหะเกวันหังอภิวาเทมิสวากขาโตมหะเกวัตตาธัมโมธัมมังนัมสสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหะเกวัตโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมหะเกวาอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารนังสัมมุโนสกาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาดามาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสนังโอโตภะคะวะติ If you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. Once again, welcome to everyone. Nice to see everyone in class today. Welcome whether you're joining on Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you're listening to this on the replay. Our class today is all about helping you to understand the three poisons. This is chapter 8 of our book, Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment. If you're reading along in this book, you know that the title of this chapter is Transforming the Three Poisons: Craving, Anger, and Ignorance. This is where you start to broaden your understanding of what's really going on in the unenlightened mind and also deepen it. Start to understand how the solutions of the Eightfold Path really target the pollutions of the mind. These three poisons are actually hindering the mind from being able to experience the peace and the joy of the enlightened mental state. This is the cause of all those discontent feelings. While so far in this group learning program, I've shared with you on a few different occasions the Four Noble Truths, that gives you like a window into the unenlightened mind, helping you to understand in 4 simple statements what is the problem in the mind, discontentedness, what is the cause of that problem, the craving, desire, attachment, the longing, yearning, wanting things to be permanent when you live in an impermanent world. Then the third noble truth is helping you to understand that there's an elimination for this, that you can eliminate your discontentedness by eliminating craving, desire, attachment. And then the fourth noble truth is that the complete solution to eliminating the discontentedness is the Eightfold Path. And that gives you a little bit of a window in a way that you can easily understand and independently verify that it's your own mind that's causing these discontent feelings. And we tend to spend a lot of time talking about craving, desire, attachment, this longing, yearning, where the mind is chasing after things. But there's more at play here that's causing these difficulties and struggles in one's day-to-day life. So by understanding the 3 poisons or the 3 unwholesome roots, you're going to be able to understand a broader understanding, a broader context of what's actually going on in the mind, and then understanding the solutions of how what the Buddha is sharing with you is really targeting these individual pollutions. So I'm going to share this with you today, and just like always, I'm going to open up for questions at different times, helping you to be able to understand what it is that I'm sharing with you. Because remember, it's important that you don't believe anything. Don't believe anything that I share or anybody else shares. Don't believe anything you see in books, because you need to learn, reflect, and practice. The Buddha teaches that whenever you're learning his teachings, it's important to listen with eager ears, because when you're actively learning, that's when you can actually cultivate wisdom to be able to then transform the mind. Because remember, you're going to need to do the intellectual learning, investigation, and examination, the reflection to independently verify what is being taught is true. But then you're going to need to practice. And that's where the real transformation is happening, when you're practicing the teachings, integrating them into your day-to-day life. So as I go, you're going to hear me talk about these 3 poisons, and I'm going to talk about what they are. I'm going to talk about the symptoms of them that you're going to experience, and I'm going to talk about the solutions. And when you hear me talking about what these pollutions are and what the symptoms are, it's helpful if you reflect on these as part of your day-to-day life and what you've been experiencing over the course of your life. Because some of you I've met, some of you I've spent time with, some of you I've talked with, but some of you I've actually never met. And those of you that I have spent time with, we've only spent time to a certain degree. So I don't know your life inside and out. But when you hear me talking about these pollutions and what they are and the symptoms of them, you're going to hear examples that you're familiar with, because these are things that are happening in your life. And that's how you'll know what is being shared with you is the truth, because I haven't been involved in your day-to-day life, but yet I'm describing what you experience on a day-to-day basis. And that's going to help you to be able to confirm this. And then you'll have more confidence to be able to implement the solutions to then uproot this and actually eliminate it from the mind. So first, let's just talk about what the 3 poisons are. They're referred to as the 3 poisons or 3 unwholesome roots or 3 fires. Sometimes they're even referred to as the defilements or pollutions or taints. This is a high-level description of what's going on in the unenlightened mind and what's keeping it in the unenlightened state. It explains why the unenlightened mind experiences certain aspects of day-to-day life and how decisions being made through these 3 poisons are leading to unwholesome results or unwholesome karma. Because every decision you make is going to lead to a certain result. And when you're making decisions through these 3 poisons or 3 unwholesome roots, it's going to produce unwholesome results or unwholesome karma. And when you're not aware of these pollutions, you're going to be making decisions through them, and then that's what's going to produce the unwholesome results in your day-to-day life. What you experience as a result of your decisions is referred to as karma. Some people call this karma, which is the Sanskrit version of this word. The Pali language that the original teachings of the Buddha are in, they use the word karma. If this translated to just one English word, I would use it because it would be much easier for everyone. But since it doesn't translate to one English word, I still need to use this word karma. What it means is cause and effect, or action and result, the results of your decisions. It's nothing mystical or magical. It's not about punishments and rewards, or who's at fault, or who's to blame. It's not some black cloud that's following you around. Instead, it's helping you to see that when you make decisions wisely, you're going to experience wholesome karma, or wholesome results. And when you make decisions unwisely, you will experience unwholesome karma, or unwholesome results. And each decision that you make, it's going to produce a certain result. And when you lack wisdom of this natural law, you'll be out in the world thinking that you're making all the best decisions, but not realizing that inadvertently you're making unwise decisions that's producing unwholesome results. And when those unwholesome results or unwholesome karma is coming back to us in the unenlightened state, we tend to blame other people for it, because the ego is in the mind thinking that I'm right and everyone else is wrong. And these unwholesome things that are happening to me can't be because of me. But then when wholesome things are happening, it's like, oh, that's me. That's all me. That's for me, right? Or sometimes people say that what they're experiencing is good luck or bad luck or destiny or fate, or they think it might be God that's controlling what they experience, or some entity called the universe. Or again, they might blame it on other people. And as long as you subscribe to this type of thinking, you can never actually fix anything that you're experiencing in your day-to-day life, because you're locked in and you can't change any of these things. You can't change good luck or bad luck. You can't change destiny or fate. You can't change God or some entity called the universe. And you can't change other people. But this isn't truly how things are actually working. It's just the way that the mind has these beliefs in the unenlightened state. It hasn't awoke to the wisdom to see how things truly are in the world. Because if there's anything that you don't particularly care for that's going on in your life, all you need to do is cultivate wisdom, make different decisions, and you will experience different results. But if it's good luck, bad luck, destiny or fate, God or an entity called the universe, or it's other people, you can't actually do that because you're locked in. So everything that you experience in your day-to-day life is coming from decisions that you're making. And if you doubt this and you can't see this truth, it's important that you reflect on it to be able to see for yourself. This is where you can start asking yourself questions. Ask yourself, who chose the hairstyle that you currently have? Who chose the clothing that you're wearing? Who chose whether or not you had breakfast for eat this morning, what you actually ate? Who chose where you live? Who chose whether you have a job or not, or what job you have? Who chose where you live? Right? We could go on and on and on, and you can see that all these decisions are actually coming from you, and you're experiencing the results of those decisions. And the beauty in understanding this and embracing this and be able to see the truth is that it empowers you. Because now, if there's anything that you don't particularly care for that's going on in your life, you cultivate wisdom, you make different decisions, and you experience different results. But with these three poisons in the mind will be hindered from making those wise decisions, because it's going to be making decisions through these pollutions. And now, as you're making decisions through the unwholesome roots, it's going to produce unwholesome results. But there's a better way of life here that the Buddha taught, which is to eliminate these three poisons or these three unwholesome roots, cultivating the mind, and now making decisions through the wholesome roots, which are the antidotes or the remedy or the solution to all of this. These three poisons provide a high-level description to help you understand clearly what is going on in the unenlightened mind, but the antidotes or the solutions, these are the remedies to actually move the mind towards enlightenment. Now, the Buddha teaches in this layered approach. The Four Noble Truths is the first kind of entry into understanding the human mind. Then you've got the three poisons, which is the next level down. But then the deepest level is called the 10 fetters. I introduced you to this way back at the beginning of the program, and even when we were talking about chapter 3. The 10 fetters are those 10 individual pollutions that the Buddha discovered. And that's what you're ultimately working to eliminate. And all of his teachings in one way or another is helping you to eradicate those 10 fetters. It's called a fetter because during his lifetime, it was a shackle and a chain and a ball that was around a person's ankle that would keep them confined to a certain area. This was for a prisoner, where today we put prisoners in jail cells or prison cells. But back then, they would just attach a fetter to your ankle, which was a shackle, a chain, and a ball. So when he discovered these pollutions in his mind, he referred to them as fetters because it's keeping the mind trapped or confined in this unenlightened state, continuing to experience discontentedness over and over again. And when you eradicate these from the mind, you'll be able to experience the liberation and the peace and the joy. So when we talk about them at the most detailed level, they're referred to as the 10 fetters. And it's important to ultimately understand each one of those. But at this early stage of your development, you don't typically dive into those in too much detail. You focus on getting the core central teachings underway, and you start learning things like the three poisons, the three unwholesome roots, because if you understand these, it's only a matter of time before you can drill down deeper and actually understand the 10 fetters. Because the Buddha provides solutions to all of these. This is where the Buddha oftentimes gets the reputation of being like a doctor, because there's certain symptoms in the mind, and then there's a certain prescription or antidote. And that's what you're going to start seeing today, that there's going to be certain symptoms that I'm going to help you to see that your mind's experiencing, and then certain antidote or certain prescription, a certain remedy. And what these remedies are the three wholesome roots. And when you're making decisions through the three wholesome roots, that's what's going to produce wholesome gamma, or wholesome results for you. So what I'm going to do is talk about these from a high level. Then we're going to drill into them in detail. We're going to talk about the solutions. But first, let me just kind of give you an overview of what we're talking about. And some of this is going to sound somewhat familiar to you because we've been talking about it a little bit here and there as we've been going through the group learning program. The three poisons, or three unwholesome roots, or three fires, they're known as craving, anger, and ignorance. This is the way some people refer to them as. But there's more than one way to refer to these. So you might hear people refer to them as greed, hatred, and delusion, or desire, ill will, and confusion. These are different ways that people refer to them. The craving is the desire, the longing, the yearning, the attachment, the chasing after the objects of your affection, thinking the next new shiny object waiting around the corner is going to provide some lasting satisfaction. It's almost like an unquenchable thirst that the mind is looking for something external to chase after, and chase and chase and chase. And it really wants pleasant feelings, and it's chasing after these things. It's almost like a dog chasing after a rabbit. The mind in the unenlightened state functions very much like an animal. Even though we're not animals, we're humans, we tend to chase and chase and chase and chase and chase. And then oftentimes, like an animal, once you catch what it is that you're chasing, you kind of get bored of it, right? So when the mind gets what it wants, when it's chasing after those unquenchable thirsts, that longing, yearning that it has, if it gets what it wants, it gets pleasant feelings like happiness, excitement, elation, thrill, exhilaration, euphoria. But if it's not getting what it wants, then it gets the painful feelings like anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety. This is what the mind's experiencing when it doesn't get what it wants. And then it can also experience the neither painful nor pleasant feelings as well. So these cravings are motivating the mind to chase and chase and chase and chase and chase. And again, if it gets what it wants, it gets those pleasant feelings. But if it doesn't get what it wants, it gets the painful ones. And now when those painful feelings are starting to arise, one of the things that can arise in the mind is the anger, the hatred, the bitterness, the hostility, the aggression, the animosity, the resentment. And this feels very painful for the mind to experience. And the mind attributes these feelings to something external. It firmly believes that something external is causing this. So the mind oftentimes becomes unskillful during this period of time, where it might push people away, or it might push the situation away. This is called aversion, where the mind thinks if I just push this person out of my life, then things will be better. So you might push friends or family out of your life. But you can see this doesn't solve the problem, because you still get angry, you still get annoyed, you still get frustrated. Or you might be bitter and harsh and hostile with someone through your intentions, speech, and actions. This is because the mind is almost trying to fear this other person into getting things your way. It's the harshness and bitterness and hostility that the mind has in that situation. It's almost like an animal growling and roaring, trying to scare this other animal into doing things your way. Or the third thing the mind will do is put its expectations on people and try to control and force them to do things your way. So as long as these cravings are in the mind, there's going to be this anger that's arising, and now it becomes unskillful, pushing people away, being bitter, harsh, and hostile, or putting your expectations on people. And now you can't live with all beings harmoniously. In fact, some people might actually be doing this to you, where they're pushing you away, or being bitter, harsh, and hostile to you, or putting their expectations on you and trying to control you. And where all this is coming from is this third one, which is oftentimes referred to as ignorance, but I tend to use the phrase unknowing of true reality, because this is a better way to refer to it, where it's confusion or misunderstanding or misperception. The mind just doesn't understand what it doesn't understand. The word ignorance is like a derogatory word, and we wouldn't refer to somebody in a derogatory and diminishing way, and neither would the Buddha, right? An enlightened being isn't going to talk down to somebody and call them ignorant. So a better way to think about this is confusion or misunderstanding or misperception, a lack of wisdom, because the mind lacks wisdom, it will firmly believe that other people are causing you to be angry and frustrated. So while we call this craving, anger, and ignorance, it's really because of ignorance that craving and anger continues. If it wasn't for the ignorance, then craving and anger would be eradicated. And that's why you're taught on this path to never believe anything. Because with belief, you don't know what's true or false. You're just believing it. You wouldn't be able to actually get to wisdom, which is the antidote for this ignorance. And that's what's going to help you to be able to eradicate your craving and anger, is have the wisdom of how to do that. Because, we were all taught growing up how to clean this body. And we learned that it's wise to clean this body. And we do that, by the time we're 10, 12, 14 years old, we really enjoy it, right? When we're younger, no, not so much. We want to play because we have those strong cravings and we just want to play. But by the time we're 10, 12, 14 years old, we start taking showers on our own because we really like that feeling of being fresh. And we go out into the world having taken a shower and we feel really fresh and we feel great. But if we didn't shower, if we didn't clean this body for an extended period of time, maybe days, weeks, months, or even years, it would feel very uncomfortable to be in this body, which is the same case with the mind. If you're cleaning the body, but you're not cleaning the mind, this is the reason why the mind has things like stress and anxiety and these other things, that the mind is struggling and having difficulties because it's unclean. It's got these pollutions in there. But the mind doesn't have the wisdom of how to clean the craving and anger out. We gained the wisdom of how to clean the physical body, but more likely than not, our parents didn't have the wisdom of how to teach us to be able to clean the mind. No fault of them, it's just that they didn't have the wisdom themselves either. So now that you're an adult, you have the opportunity to be able to learn how to clean the mind. Because going around the world with a polluted mind, you're going to feel very uncomfortable in certain situations. So this is a high-level understanding of the three poisons or three unwholesome roots or three fires. But now we're going to go into each one in detail, and I'm going to really focus on the solutions, helping you to understand things that you've already learned, perhaps, that are going to really target these pollutions. Because it's the Eightfold Path that is the core central teaching, and that's targeting all these pollutions. And you really need to get that up and running in order to be able to see all the improvements to the condition of the mind that are available for you based on this path that the Buddha is teaching. But as part of the Eightfold Path, there's certain parts of it that are really targeting certain aspects of these pollutions. So all the factors of the Eightfold Path are really needed to move the mind to enlightenment. You wouldn't be able to just do what I'm talking about today in order to be able to get to enlightenment, but this helps you to be able to kind of see exactly what's really targeting these specific pollutions. So once again, that craving, that longing, that yearning, the burning desire, the never-ending thirst, the wanting and chasing after the objects of your affection, wanting this lasting satisfaction, not really feeling whole or complete or fulfilled, because the mind's chasing, and it only gets those temporary pleasant feelings that arise, change, and fade away. The mind gets happy when it gets what it wants, what it's expecting, but when it doesn't get what it wants, it gets those painful feelings of anger, sadness, frustration, and others. So with this mind chasing, it can usually see that really well. But if the mind isn't chasing, it will oftentimes feel exhausted and it will swing all the way to the other side where it's feeling dull and lethargic and lazy. But that's not the middle way either. The middle way is coming to the middle with the Eightfold Path, fine-tuning the mind and pursuing goals, objectives, or interests through wise decision-making. But the mind doesn't know how to do this in the unenlightened state because it's holding on. It's craving permanence. So those examples that I've given in other classes, like if you've had a boyfriend or girlfriend that you've been together with, when you first got together, you've got happy or excited. But when you guys broke up, perhaps you were angry or frustrated or lonely or bored or missing this person. This is because the mind's holding on and craving permanence. And as long as this person was in your life, there was a certain amount of comfort. But when you guys broke up, that's where the sadness and the despair comes in. Same thing with that example that I give about the car, the brand new car, and then driving it off the lot and getting a scratch on it, and then you're frustrated. That's the mind craving permanence. Or say you've been to the airport, you are really excited to go on this trip. And now when you go to this airport and your flight is delayed, you might be frustrated or agitated or annoyed. It's not the airline company that's causing that. It's the mind's craving for permanence. The mind wants every plane that you're on to take off as scheduled. And it's just not possible because there's going to be weather issues, there's going to be maintenance issues, crew issues. This is going to happen. If you travel enough, you're going to meet with delays. It's a normal part of flying because it's a normal part of life, that it's the universal truth of impermanence, that things are constantly changing. But the mind craves this permanence. It's holding on. So that's where this breathing mindfulness meditation comes in that we just did, and that you would be wise to do continuously every single day, building up to 2 or 3 sessions per day. What this breathing mindfulness meditation is doing is when you're focused on the breath and the mind moves off the breath, you're letting go. The mind is letting go to be able to come back to the breath. The goal of this meditation isn't to eliminate your thoughts. As long as you are alive, you're going to have thoughts. It's same thing as an enlightened being. An enlightened being is going to have thoughts during their meditation. But the difference is in the unenlightened state, you'll have a bombardment of thoughts, or you will indulge in a thought and follow it for a period of time. An enlightened being, they'll have a thought, they'll notice it right away, they'll cut it off and let it go and bring their mind back to their breath. And it takes time to get the mind to that point because the mind doesn't know how to let go. So if 10, 20, 30 times during your meditation you need to let go, this is actually really good for the mind, because with craving, desire, attachment, the mind won't do that. So if you can think back to that boyfriend or girlfriend that you guys broke up, when you guys were together, you were happy, but when you broke up, you were sad or frustrated. And that continued in the mind as long as your mind was holding on. But at some point, you decided to let go. You were like, you know what? If he wants to be with someone else, so be it. And you let go. And that's where your peace and your joy came in. Or, if she would like to move to another part of the country or another part of the world, so be it. And you let go. And that's where you regained your peacefulness. But the mind in the unenlightened state doesn't know how to let go. So this breathing mindfulness meditation is helping you to build the awareness of mind, that when your mind is moving, when it's moving from the breath off of that, you're aware that that has happened. That's your mindfulness or your awareness of mind. And then when you cut off and let go, you're building this internal mechanism within your mind to be able to let go. So that now in your day-to-day life, when you're noticing the anger starting to arise, or the frustration, or the loneliness or boredom, or the shyness, or the guilt, or the shame, or the fear, or any of these other discontent feelings, when you're noticing it or starting to arise, potentially as a bodily sensation, which is the first part of it, you can cut it off and let it go. If you're training your mind consistently this way, you'll be able to actually cut it off and let it go. And that preserves the mind, that it doesn't have to experience this discontent feeling. You're not suppressing your feelings or repressing them. You're actually cutting it off before it becomes a feeling, as a bodily sensation. The tingling in the body, the tightening in the chest, the heat in the face, the pressure in the skull. This is all that early warning system that your mind can build awareness of. That's what the breathing mindfulness meditation is doing, is helping you to build that mindfulness or that awareness that this is starting to arise. And you know that if I don't cut it off as a bodily sensation, it's going to become a feeling. And now it's a lot harder to get it out of the mind. So you're essentially helping the mind to not form this conditioned feeling, because if you keep allowing it to do that, then it's going to keep doing it. So you need this concentration and this mindfulness, that you're essentially exercising the mind in your meditation and building these qualities of mind so that then in your day-to-day life, you can actually apply them. So in meditation, you're cultivating the mind and you're cutting off anything and everything that comes up because you're exercising the mind. But when you go out into the world, you're only cutting off the unwholesome things that are coming up in the mind. Because if you have a thought to maybe take your mom out to lunch or to dinner, you don't have to cut that off. Or if you're thinking of some other, wholesome thing, you don't have to cut that off. But if you're thinking of punching your boss in the face, yeah, you got to cut that off, right? Because that's going to produce unwholesome results for you, right? So this is just like a professional athlete. A professional athlete goes into the gym and they're going to do agility training, cardiovascular training, they're going to do weight training, but maybe their sport is pole vaulting. It looks very different than what they're doing in the gym. It's the same thing that your meditation looks very different than what you're doing in your day-to-day life. Because in the gym, when you're exercising the mind with this breathing mindfulness meditation, you'd like to cut off anything and everything because you're exercising the mind, teaching it to let go. And now when you're in day-to-day life, you only cut off and let go of the unwholesome things that are coming up. And then you're also using generosity to be able to train your mind to let go. Because with craving, desire, attachment, the mind will tend to hold on, and it will be somewhat selfish. It'll think that if I'm going to spend 3 hours doing this, I want this in return. Or if I'm going to spend 3 days doing this, I want this in return. It's unwilling to give and share with other people freely, being joyful and giving and sharing with others. So when you're practicing generosity, you would like to share your time, effort, energy, and resources more than is strictly required in any given situation without any expectation of anything in return. And you can do this in really simple ways, right? It doesn't have to take this enormous amount of time because you need to even practice your generosity from the middle way. If you were giving excessively, you wouldn't have what you need to be able to survive and get your basic necessities met. But if you were never helping others and practicing generosity, you would be quite selfish. So you need to come to the middle even with your generosity. The only goal of your generosity is to enhance the quality of the mind. And you can do this throughout your day, where the Buddha teaches you to practice generosity frequently. It's something that you should be doing daily. So you can do simple things, like say you're walking into a store and you see there's someone behind you, you could actually hold the door for them and let them in, right? But you need to be sure that you do this without any expectation of anything in return. Because if you're standing there with the expectation that they will say thank you, right? And they walk in and they don't say thank you, you'll be frustrated, you'll be agitated or annoyed because that's not generosity. That's still got craving, desire, attachment in there. And every single person who walks through this door can't say thank you because of impermanence. We know that it's not possible, that it's just not going to happen. Some people aren't even going to see you standing there. Their mind is so caught up in what they would like to get out of this store that they don't even see you standing there holding the door. So when you're practicing generosity, you can do simple things that are very easy for you and that you're able to do this without any expectation of anything in return. Say you're at the market and you're buying some fruits. Maybe you're buying some mangoes or something like this. And you know your neighbor likes bananas. Maybe toss some bananas in there, right? It only takes an extra 30 seconds or a minute to put that extra fruit in there. And boom, now you can share some fruit with your neighbor, right? This is an easy way to practice generosity. You're at the store buying yourself a candy bar, buy an extra couple of candy bars and give them away, right? It's really simple, really easy. So the Buddha teaches you to practice breathing mindfulness meditation and generosity daily. It's a daily practice where with meditation, you like to build up to 2 or 3 sessions per day for 30 minutes or more. Understanding it can take 6 months, a year, even 2 years to build up to that. But if you have an option of 1 meditation for 30 minutes or 2 for 15, the 2 for 15 is actually more impactful. You'll notice that frequency is more important than the duration. And the same thing's true with generosity. Your frequency of generosity is more important than the amount. If it was a matter of giving $500 once a year to a children's orphanage or $1 a day, you're going to notice more benefit with the $1 a day because the mind's having to more frequently let go, let go, let go, let go. So this is craving, this is desire, this is attachment, this is the wants and expectations, the mind's longing, yearning, chasing after those pleasant feelings. But the breathing mindfulness meditation and generosity is training the mind to let it go and not have this chase so that you can come to the middle and pursue things as a goal, objective, or interest through wise decision making. So I'm going to pause here and see if you guys have any questions on this first one. You guys are probably most familiar with this one because we spent a pretty good amount of time talking about this at different times. If you have questions, you can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions. Okay, so if the mind is getting what it wants, again, it gets those pleasant feelings. But if it doesn't get what it wants, it gets the painful feelings. And that's where the anger comes in. The mind becomes bitter and harsh and hostile. It can become aggressive and resentful towards others. And when you're doing this, the mind is firmly believing that this anger is coming from something external. It thinks that somebody or some external thing is causing this. So that's why it tends to push people away or push the situation away. Or it'll become bitter, harsh, and hostile through your intention, speech, and actions. Or it'll start putting expectations on people and trying to control them and force them to do things your way. Because the mind's trying to get its cravings fulfilled. It thinks if I can just get things my way, everything will be perfect. So it thinks if I push these people away, then I can get what I want. Or if I be bitter, harsh, and hostile to people, I'll fear them into doing things my way and I'll get what I want. Or if the mind puts its expectations and pressures and tries to force people to do things, the mind thinks I'll get what I want. But this actually doesn't work because there's 8 billion people in the world. And you can't convince 8 billion people to do things your way. So when you're being unskillful like this, it's just damaging your relationships. Because of the natural law of karma, whatever you put out, it's going to come back to you. So when you're bitter, harsh, and hostile with people, through your intention, speech, and actions, that's what's coming back to you. It's damaging your relationships. So there's a better way of life here that the Buddha taught, that you can practice loving kindness meditation to essentially rewire the mind. It's like filling up the gas tank with love and kindness, where you have this genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. Then you can go out into the world and practice through your intention, speech, and actions to be loving and kind. That's where the real transformation is happening in your day-to-day life. Even though you can't do this, let's just say that you were meditating for 23 hours a day, but an hour a day you went outside and you were bitter, harsh, and hostile with people, you're not anywhere close to enlightenment, right? Because the mind hasn't understood that this bitterness and harshness is coming from your own mind, and venting it on other people and taking it out on other people isn't serving any wholesome purpose whatsoever. So the real work, where the rubber meets the road, is where you go out into the world, you be loving and kind with the people around you. So this loving kindness meditation essentially rewires the mind to be loving and kind. But you can't just meditate your way to love and kindness. You're going to need to actually practice through your intention, speech, and actions. So if you haven't learned this with me yet, I did a 4-part series towards I think it was the second month of the group learning program. It's been recorded. You can learn the loving kindness meditation because you'd like to spend about 2, 4, maybe 6 weeks building up your breathing mindfulness meditation practice first, then bring in your loving kindness meditation. So that in the morning, which is a really good time to do this meditation, you go out in your day with loving kindness filled up in the mind. And now your 2 or 3 sessions per day, you have at least the morning one, which is loving kindness, which is really going to help you to go outside and be loving and kind. And that's where the real transformation is happening, when you're improving your intention, speech, and actions. And that's where the Eightfold Path is also helping you, because the Buddha is teaching right speech, right action, and right livelihood of how to be loving and kind with all the people around you. And now the more loving and kind that you are, you'll see this coming back to you. You know, when I was growing up as a child, I had a lot of resentment and hostility towards my mom. And I could never have a wonderful relationship with mom as long as I had these cravings, these wants and expectations, wanting mom to be a certain way. And over our course of our life, when we would get together, it was only a matter of time before fireworks went off, right? If we came together, mom would pick up the rubber ball of anger and throw it around the room, and I'd pick up the rubber ball of anger and throw it around the room, and she'd pick it up and I'd pick it up. And next thing you know, we got all these rubber balls of anger bouncing around. Well, I did this for a good long while into my kind of late 20s and early 30s. But slowly but surely, I decided to start transforming my mind. I stopped doing those kinds of things. I started to understand that I needed to train my own mind. So I started training my own mind, where I started to rewire it with this loving kindness meditation and being loving and kind when I was around her. So in the past, where we would talk on the phone and she would be bitter, harsh, and hostile, I would be bitter, harsh, and hostile right back, right? But then I started doing things differently because my mind understood to be loving and kind, and this was the way that we were going to get to a better relationship. So where she started being bitter, harsh, and hostile, I would just say things like, Mom, I know I was bitter and harsh with you in the past. I really apologize about that. I love you so much. And I'm going to get off the phone and let you think about what you just said. And we'll talk another time, Mom. I love you so much. and I'd get off the phone with her. And sometimes we wouldn't talk for maybe 3 months or 6 months or something like this. But then I would call her back and we would start talking, and maybe things would be fine for a few months. But at some point, she'd be bitter, harsh, and hostile again. And I would say, Mom, I love you so much. And I really would like to see our relationship get to a point where, we can be loving and kind with each other. I'm going to get off the phone, Mom. I'll talk to you another time. I love you so much. Bye-bye. And I would get off the phone, right? And she could see that her son wasn't bitter and harsh and hostile anymore, right? It was her mind that was angry and frustrated, and she needed to work on that, right? And I didn't give her unsolicited guidance. I just chose to end the conversation and get off the phone. And slowly but surely, she transformed her mind too. And by the time she died, for the last 10, 15 years of her life, we were just loving and kind and warm and gentle with each other. And we didn't have any problems in our relationship whatsoever. But I needed to change my mind. That's where you need to start. Because all throughout my early days, I kept wanting to change Mom. That's what we tend to do when we have difficulties and struggles in our relationships. We tend to want to change the other person. We don't realize we actually need to change our own mind. Because what we do before we understand the Four Noble Truths is we firmly believe that this anger is coming from something external. And we think the way to fix that is to change other people. So now when we get angry, we go down this well-worn path of anger and hostility and bitterness. The bushes are pushed back, the stickers are pushed back, the grass is worn out. And we know where this path goes because we've been down there many times. It leads to broken relationships. But if you're interested in doing something different and seeing different results, now you need to get out your machete and you need to form this new path, this new way of life. And that's why it's challenging, because you've got to break through the stickers. You got to break through the bushes with your machete. And now you form this new path. And over time, you go down this path more and more, that this old path gets overgrown. The stickers and the bushes and the grass grow back, and you don't go down that path anymore because you're not interested in continuing to have bitter and harsh and hostile relationships and broken relationships. And it's this loving kindness meditation that's going to help you rewire your mind to be able to do that. And then the Eightfold Path is going to help you to see how to be loving and kind through your intentions, speech, your actions, and your livelihood and your day-to-day life. And now as you're putting out love and kindness in your relationships, more and more, this is what's going to come back to you. It's not going to be instantaneous. It's not going to be in 1 week or 1 month or maybe even in 1 year. But over time, as you gradually improve the condition of your mind and you're starting to be more and more loving and kind, this is what will come back to you. Because there's kind of like 3 categories of relationships that you'll experience, that you're probably in certain relationships right now, that there's a certain amount of bitterness, harshness, and hostility, maybe on your side and their side too. And you're not really committed to these relationships, and they're not really long-term relationships, or maybe they have been long-term, but you're not planning for them to be long-term, and you're not really committed to them, and it's best to just let go and move on from those relationships. You don't have to tell the person. You can just slowly start moving away, spending less and less time with this person, contacting them and less. And now that'll clean up that particular aspect of your life where you're not being bitter, harsh, and hostile. But then there's a second category of relationships where you are committed to those relationships. Like my mom, I was committed to that relationship. I needed to kind of step away, improve the condition of my mind, and then I was able to improve the way I was functioning in this relationship, and then things got better. And then there's a third category, which are brand new people that you've never even met yet. You don't even know their names or who they are. But when you meet those people, if you're training your mind in this way, you'll only be loving and kind in those relationships. And that's what you'll get back in those relationships is love and kindness. So these 3 categories of relationships is the way to clean this up. Is you're going to need to let go of certain relationships and move on. You're going to need to improve the condition of your mind, and you're going to perform better in these relationships, and you'll see that it will gradually clear out. And then there's that third category of brand new people that you haven't even met yet, and you'll only ever be loving and kind, because if you understand this natural law of cause and effect, you would be unwise to be bitter, harsh, and hostile to people, because all that's coming from your own mind. In fact, by the time you get to enlightenment and you fully uproot this anger, you won't even have the slightest dislike towards another person. Right now, you probably have certain people that you like in the world, and there are certain people that you dislike. The people that you like, that's because they're meeting your expectations. They're doing things your way, the way you want them to do it. But these people who you dislike, they're not meeting your expectations. They're doing things opposite of the way you want them to do it. But that's coming from your own mind. Not everybody's going to be able to do things your way. In fact, there's only one person in the world that actually does things your way. Do you know who this person is? The one person who does things your way all the time? Well, it's you, right? That's the only person who does things your way. So if you can only spend time and be peaceful and love people who do things your way, there's only one person in the world that you can actually spend time with. And you might actually have trouble loving this person too sometimes. If you have an inner dialogue that is like degrading and diminishing within your own mind, that's coming from your anger and hatred too, your ill will. So when you're practicing loving kindness meditation and being more loving and kind, you can do that with yourself too, where you can get rid of this inner dialogue where you're diminishing and degrading yourself. So it's through transforming the mind away from this poison or this unwholesome root that's going to help you to be able to accomplish all these things where you can be loving and kind in all situations. But you'll find that to be very difficult when you have these cravings in the mind, wanting and longing, yearning, expecting things to be done a certain way, and then that arises this anger. So that's why you need to clear this out of the mind so you can be loving and kind in all situations. So let me know what questions you guys have here on this one. Remember, you can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. So it looks like Steve has a question in Zoom. He's saying, teacher, is there a point in which we should cut off a relationship when it appears that a reconciliation is impossible? Yeah, but when to do that is going to be a decision that each individual needs to make. There isn't really any kind of specific thing that a teacher could say, like, if this happens, absolutely end the relationship. Because you need to be able to look at all the variables, and only you know what all those variables are, how long you guys have been in a relationship, what's the history been like, what's the things that are going on in this relationship, all these different things. And you need to be able to look at all those criteria and then make wise decisions for yourself. But the mind will oftentimes cling and hold on to these relationships because it doesn't want to let go, because it's holding on and holding on. This is like if somebody was in a relationship, they're getting physically abused, they oftentimes will hold on to this relationship. That's kind of like the one rare situation where I usually suggest to people to leave and get out, because if there's physical abuse going on, or even sexual abuse or something like that, that's a time to get away, because you need to have love and kindness for this being who you are and have compassion for this being, because if you stay in that kind of relationship, there's just going to be continued ongoing danger that you're facing each time you're with this person. But otherwise, you're going to need to look at what the situation is and see basically how committed are you to this relationship, and how committed do you think they are? And do you think that there's a less of enough of hostility and anger that this can actually be sorted out? Because if not, it's better to just step away. And the reason why you don't need to go to this person and tell them that that's what you're doing, because oftentimes what people do is they go to someone and they say, okay, I can't be your friend anymore, and here's all the reasons why. All you're doing is you're listing out all your cravings, desires, attachments, your expectations. I wanted you to do this and you didn't do it. I wanted you to do this and you didn't do it. I wanted you to do this and you didn't do it. You're just listing out all your expectations. And now the person experiencing this confrontation where you're telling them, hey, I want you to be this way, and you're not, they're either going to grab on really tight and try to not let you go, or they're going to get really angry and frustrated. And now you guys' relationship's going to explode, right? Whereas if you do that, there's really no opportunity for reconciliation at any particular time. But if you just gradually kind of move away from this person, given it's not like a legal marriage or something like this, and it's just a friend or an acquaintance or something, if you just gradually move away from this person, now you work on your mind. Maybe they have some different experiences. Maybe 3 years later, you guys see each other. It's like, hey, Barbara, hey, Bob, I haven't seen you for a while. How you been doing? Right? And you just kind of catch up with them. And maybe they're in a completely different space within their mind than they were 3 years ago. Maybe you are too. And now maybe the relationship can be rekindled, right? Because you guys are coming from a different perspective. But if we have that confrontation Where we're downloading all the reasons why we can't be their friends, again, we're just listing out all our expectations. And then that reconciliation 3 years from now that has a potential, there's not going to be that potential because they see you in the mall, they see you coming, and they're either going to try to avoid you or they're going to be bitter, harsh, and hostile with you. So it's better to just gradually move off into the sunset, like you're just gradually walking over the horizon and just kind of gradually ease away from this. Okay, it looks like Marta might have a question. Go ahead, ma'am. You just need to, there you go. Did you unmute yourself? Yeah, your mute's off, but I can't hear you. Let me make sure it's not my speakers. It could be my speakers. 1 second. Yep, it's my speakers. Okay, now I should be able to hear you.
Okay, great. Can you hear me now?
Sure can.
No. Okay, perfect. Thank you. So I have a question about the situation when, let's say, I'm with the friends that talk something racist about other people, or are gossiping and not, saying things that are not true or I'm not agreeing with. So I'm just thinking, should my first reaction would be to gently kind of mention that I disagree, or, I feel like I want to react. It's not that I just want to slowly move out of it, right? I feel like because I disagree with this, I'm curious, what would you say about that? It's because my anger is there, and or my disappointment in some way, right? That this is happening, and I'm not agreeing for this in kind of with my ethics or with my values.
Yeah. So what's happening here is your expectations aren't being met, right? You have this expectation for this person to speak a certain way. The mind's craving this permanence, and not everybody thinks the same way as you, and not everybody speaks the same way. So that's why that anger is arising. And what you learn from the Eightfold Path is under right speech, that if it's not the proper time to speak, it's unwise to speak. And the proper time would be ensuring that you're not interrupting, making sure that your mind is calm and peaceful, making sure their mind is calm and peaceful. So if you're noticing anger is arising, it's not the proper time to speak, and it's going to produce unwholesome results for you. And that's where it's best to just perhaps get up and walk away, because then this person understands their gamma, that whenever they talk racist and discriminatory things, that they see that they're gossiping and slandering, people don't want to be around them. So you get up and walk away. And whether you leave the conversation for good or you just leave it for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, and then come back, that's a case-by-case situation. The other option that you can do, but if you're angry, it might not be the best idea, is to just change the subject. If you think you can change the subject, and then that way you don't talk about the thing that they're discussing where your anger is coming up, you could just change the subject. Because the gossip and the slander, the unwise speech that other people have, it's affecting them in terms of their karma and the choices that they're making. It's going to lead to unwholesome results for them. But if you don't allow it to influence your mind, it's not going to affect you. Because if it's affecting you getting angry, that's because of your own craving, desire, attachment. And of course, you're not going to be influenced to say those same things yourself. So you're not creating or producing any unwholesome karma by just hearing someone's gossip and slander. It's when you take the action to do it yourself, that's where now it's going to produce unwholesome karma for you. So I would suggest either getting up and walking away or just changing the subject. That's usually the best way to handle those kinds of things, and not have an expectation that they will do things your way. Okay, it looks like Adela or maybe Joe has a question.
Hi, David. Yes, this is Adela. I have a question around, I guess, communication with maybe in relationships or with a significant other without it coming off as, I think you mentioned earlier, as your cravings, I want you to do this. I want you, that type of your want, your need. How would you, let's say, for example, you are with someone, and I'm just going to use a really silly example, but if they're leaving things around the house and not picking up after themselves, how do you communicate with them? That's not in a way my craving is that, you pick up after yourself. how do you actually make it into a loving kindness type of communication, that they're going to, maybe that they're not going to take the wrong way?
Yeah. So you can't control how they're going to take what it is that you're saying. All you can do is practice right speech, and all the other factors of the Eightfold Path, because right speech comes from right intention, right? Having that intention of renunciation, non-ill will, and harmlessness. You can sit down and have discussions. That's the thing that oftentimes people don't understand about the teachings of the Buddha. They think that it's very passive, and that, letting go of craving, desire, attachment just means you walk away from everything. And that's not true. If there are certain challenges that are going on in the household where, it would be nice if things were a bit more tidy, you can talk that out with your partner, and you're going to need to find the proper time. You're going to need to speak the truth. You're going to need to speak gentle, speak beneficially, and with a mind of loving kindness. And there isn't just one fixed way to do this other than to practice the Eightfold Path, because the teachings of the Buddha, they don't have this like plug and play, like if this happens, do that, and if this happens, do that, because that would be a permanent answer for each situation. But if it's your partner, if it's a friend or a family member, you would know them best, and you could sit down and talk to them and see where the middle is for you guys. Because I faced this too. Like I grew up, I was very tidy, I kept things very clean. And my wife is not that way. She tended to have things, around the house. She wasn't dirty. It's just that she has things around the house. And this is the way Thai people pretty much live. So she actually had to kind of like come a little bit closer to where I am, but I had to go closer to where she was too. So like if I lived here by myself, the house would look different than it looks now. But also if she lived here by herself, it would look different too. So she had to move a little bit and I had to move a little bit. And that's what you need to be able to realize with these kinds of things. If it's someone you're living with, that you're not going to get things your way 100%, and they're not going to get their things 100%. And you need to be able to have a discussion without craving or expecting them to do it a certain way. Just see where there might be opportunity for things to come to the middle, and then practice that middle way.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. And you're also welcome, Steve. I see you had some thoughts there as well based on what I was sharing. Okay, looks like we have a question maybe coming in here on YouTube. There's an individual on YouTube asking, what thought can I arise to eliminate the fear, aversion, or seeing others as dangerous and harmful? You're going to need to train your mind in the Eightfold Path. There's 8 individual factors that you're going to need to consistently train your mind to be able to understand what those are and practice them daily. But then in terms of fear, there's things that you can actually do specifically that I'm going to talk about when we get to chapter 17. Chapter 17 is all about elimination of fear, and there's ways to almost surgically go in and remove the fears. If you'd like to learn about that ahead of time, you can go to the book, which you can get for free from our website, or you can take it and go print it. You can get it on Amazon or here at our temple in Chiang Mai, where you can read chapter 17. But you're not going to be able to just read chapter 17, because if you haven't learned all the other things, then chapter 17 by itself isn't going to teach you how to eliminate your fears. You're going to need to have all these other pieces in place to be able to eliminate the fear. The teachings of the Buddha, the way you might think about them is it's a complete package. Right? It's not plug and play. It's not like a little pill that you take or one little tiny technique to do this or do that. It's a complete package. And that's why it's important that you don't change any of his teachings. And this is what we see around the world, is we see a lot of changes that have happened since he lived 2,500 years ago. And once you start changing the teachings of a Buddha, they essentially become ineffective. And that's why the Buddha cautioned us and suggested that we don't change his teachings, because he knew as soon as you change his teachings, they're ineffective at that point. So there's a complete package that you need to be able to understand that package and implement it throughout your day-to-day life. And that's what's going to produce the improvement to eradicate the types of things that you were asking about. Okay, I don't see any other questions anywhere. So now I'm going to move on to this next one, which is ignorance or delusion or the unknowing of true reality, confusion or misunderstanding. This is the whole reason why craving and anger actually exist. If it wasn't for this one, craving and anger wouldn't actually exist. Because the mind's lack of wisdom, because of its wrong understanding or wrong views of reality, because of its misperceptions, the way that it looks out at the world, is unwise, and it truly believes that these feelings that are occurring are coming from other people. And this is why it just continues to stay stuck, that the mind just doesn't understand what it doesn't understand. It has misperceptions and has a lack of wisdom. So that's why the ultimate solution in the teachings of the Buddha and how to completely transform the entire mind is to arise wisdom. The three universal truths, the Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path, the five precepts, the Brahma Viharas, the natural law of Gotama, the seven factors of enlightenment, extensive meditation training, elimination of the 10 fetters. These are all the things that you start with to really get started. And you're learning all of these things and more in this particular program, where you gradually gain the wisdom of these. This is where you can see true reality. The Buddha never said, just believe me, just believe me. Instead, he said, investigate and examine the teachings, reflect on them to independently verify them and practice them. Because he knew that if you investigated his teachings close enough, that you would actually experience complete transformation. So this eradication of the ignorance and getting to wisdom, it's not an intellectual pursuit by itself, right? There needs to be a certain amount of intellectual understanding that someone has. And that's why it would be wise for you to read the book each week and come to class, ask questions where you need clarity, because you need to do a certain amount of intellectual learning to bring in the understanding of the teachings. But then the way you truly eradicate your ignorance is you move that intellectual understanding to reflection, where you start to reflect that, this might be true. This looks like it could potentially be true. But then you start practicing what it is that the Buddha is teaching you in terms of the meditations and all the other factors on the Eightfold Path. And that's where the mind truly gets its wisdom. So for example, when we were growing up as children, we were pretty much taught, for the most part, that it's unwise to use drugs and alcohol. Our parents, our grandparents, people might have told us this. And intellectually, we might have understood that it's unwise to ingest drugs and alcohol. And because of that intellectual learning, we understood it to a certain degree. But we still had ignorance in our mind because we might have still chose to do it. Because even though we intellectually understood something, we didn't have the deep wisdom to make the changes in the way that we chose to make decisions. So the way ignorance gets eradicated is through the decisions that we make. That if we truly have wisdom and we understand, for example, that we're putting poison into our body, then we would make different decisions. And if we had love and kindness for this being who we are, we wouldn't put those substances into the body. And that would be coming from our wisdom. But because we lack wisdom, that we might understand intellectually, but we're not fully making decisions through that intellectual understanding, the mind still has ignorance. So the way to get to wisdom is to break through all of that through being able to learn, reflect, and practice. And now as you're practicing and you're making decisions through the wisdom, now that's where you see real improvement to the condition of your mind in your life. Because now you're not making decisions through these three unwholesome roots any longer. Because when you make decisions through craving, which is the mind's selfish desires, you're going to sometimes get what you want and sometimes not get what you want. And when you're not getting what you want or you expect, that's where the anger is coming up. And you can see when you make decisions through anger, it's producing unwholesome results for you. And where this is all coming from is the ignorance or the unknowing of true reality. The mind just doesn't understand that it's craving that's causing these feelings. This anger is producing this unskillfulness. And as long as it keeps doing this, it's going to keep experiencing struggle after struggle after struggle. So that's why you need to arise this wisdom to be able to see true reality. So while we call it craving, anger, and ignorance, it's really because of this ignorance, this lack of wisdom, that craving and anger continues to persist in the mind. But there's solutions here. And that's what the Buddha is sharing with you of how to solve this. So just kind of a summary before I open up to any last minute questions that you guys have is what we've been talking about today is the three poisons, the three unwholesome roots, or the three fires of craving, anger, and ignorance. That craving is that selfishness, the longing, yearning, chasing after the objects of your affection. The mind can only be happy when it gets what it wants, so the happiness shrinks. The more expectations you have in your mind, the less and less happiness you can have. That's why some people are old and grumpy. Not everybody, but some people are old and grumpy, right? Because they have all these expectations and they can't be met. Because all those things being true, Like, I want my mom and dad to do this. I want my boss to do this. I want my brothers and sisters to do this. I want my life partner to do this. I want my children to do this. I want my bank account to be this. I want my house to look like this. I want my car to be like this. All these things being true is very rare. So the amount of happiness you can have really shrinks when you have craving, desire, attachment, wants, and expectations. And now that anger is arising, and then there's this ignorance that's causing all of that. Oftentimes, sometimes referred to as greed, hatred, and delusion, or desire, ill will, and confusion. But these antidotes or these wholesome roots are just the opposites. Where craving is holding on to things very tightly, generosity is just the opposite, where you're living open-handedly and being joyful in giving and sharing. Where anger, hatred, and ill will is the bitterness and hostility towards others, the loving kindness is this genuine interest in seeing all beings be well, where you're not judging other people, but you have a genuine interest in seeing them be well. And then the opposite of the ignorance or the unknowing of true reality is wisdom, to be able to clearly see these natural laws and what the Buddha actually taught, to be able to now make decisions through those natural laws. That wisdom that you arise in the mind is going to produce wholesome results. So whenever you make decisions through generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom, it's going to produce wholesome results. So what you're doing on this path is you're gradually bringing down, through all the training, your craving, anger, and ignorance. And then you're gradually increasing your generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom. And more as you're making decisions for a long-term, consistent period of time through generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom, that's what's going to produce more and more wholesome results in your life. And you'll eventually get to the point where you've extinguished all your unwholesome karma, where you will no longer experience any unwholesome results in your day-to-day life. You will only be experiencing wholesome results. This is wholesome karma. There's 5 things that you will still be experiencing even as an enlightened being. These things are called the unobtainables, that you cannot attain permanent health, permanent youthfulness, permanent life. You are going to experience sickness, aging, death, loss, and destruction, because all of these things are based in impermanence. So you're still going to experience sickness, aging, death, loss, and destruction. No matter how enlightened you are, you can't avoid those things. So sometimes when I say that you will only be experiencing wholesome results or wholesome karma, sometimes people think that means I'm only going to be getting things my way. Everything's going to be going my way. I'm going to get everything the way I want it to be. That's not what it means to get to enlightenment. It means that you're still going to be experiencing impermanence, but you're not going to be affected by it by the time you get to enlightenment. That when the body is sick, you'll understand, of course it's sick, because this body is impermanent and it can't be permanently healthy. Well, of course this body is going to age because it can't be permanently youthful. Of course this being's going to die and the people around me are going to die. That's normal. Because we were born, we need to die. And of course we're going to lose certain material possessions. They're not permanent. And of course some of our material possessions are going to be destroyed. So an unenlightened being, if a tree fell on your house, it would probably shake you up quite a bit. You'd be quite frustrated or agitated or annoyed, and maybe you would have all kinds of difficulties dealing with that situation. But as an enlightened being, that tree can still fall on your house. It's just that you're going to be able to handle it peacefully. You're going to probably call somebody to come and cut it up and remove it off the house. You might call somebody to come and fix your house, but you'll do it with peace and joy in your mind, that you're not going to be angry and frustrated and irritated. So you'll still experience sickness, aging, death, loss, and destruction, but your mind will be completely peaceful and joyful, and all your relationships will be harmonious. You won't be experiencing difficulties and struggles in your day-to-day life. So let me know what questions you guys have here about the 3 poisons or the 3 unwholesome roots. Remember, you can put this into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. So it looks like Paul has a question. Go ahead, sir.
Yes, David. I have an overwhelming tendency to not trust people. I'm aware of it, and it prevents me from having relationships because my lack of trust of people. What advice can you give to target specifically that tendency that I have?
all of these difficulties and struggles that the mind has in the unenlightened state is coming back to the same things. It's craving, anger, and ignorance. And in more detail, it's the 10 fetters. So you need to be able to get to the point where you completely purify the mind. And now, as you're making your way to enlightenment, you'll experience improvement along the way. It's not like you do 5 years of work and then wham, your mind's instantly trusting other people. But it's the same thing. It's practicing the Eightfold Path, training the mind to do all of these things on a consistent, ongoing basis. Because the reason why the mind doesn't trust is that it has craving, it has anger, and it has this ignorance. That there's certain situations that you've been in the past where maybe somebody did something that was unwise. And now your mind experienced perhaps painful feelings from that. And now the mind doesn't want to get those painful feelings any longer. It doesn't want to get those painful feelings. And the mind thinks that because I trust people, that's the reason why I got these painful feelings. And now the mind thinks if I push this situation away where I just don't trust people, that's going to solve my problem. When in reality, what the mind needs to do is understand this was an isolated situation where this person chose to do something unwise. And now, even though I trusted that person, there was maybe certain warning signs that I didn't see. And now I need to pay more attention to those. And now I just need to make wise decisions of who to include in my life. And I can trust all beings. But of course, that trust is measured, right? You're not going to go out to somebody that's standing on the street corner and hand them your house keys, right? You're going to make sure that you spend time getting to know people and that you understand, and that when you trust people with certain things, you observe and you don't give them this massive amount of trust at the beginning. You just kind of gradually increment it. But it's from craving, anger, and ignorance that's causing this. So that's why it's the same exact solutions. There's nothing special for anxiety or stress or shyness or embarrassment or trust or any of these issues. It's the same underlying causes. So it's the same solution and the same remedy to work on applying the Eightfold Path and really making sure that you understand how to implement that on a consistent, ongoing basis, which is going to get your mind to reduce and eliminate its craving, anger, and ignorance. And ultimately, slowly but surely, you'll be able to trust others.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. And one thing I'll just add to that, Paul, is making sure you understand that whatever those situations were that happened in the past that has caused you to distrust, make sure you understand those were isolated situations. And because of impermanence, not everybody functions that same way.
Yeah, it's hard for me to let my guard down. And that prevents me from having more relationships than I could have, because I still have this ingrained feeling that I have to watch out. I have to keep looking around the corner to protect myself and my family.
Yeah. So as you're practicing all these teachings, the breathing mindfulness meditation with generosity, going out and practicing generosity with people, that's going to help you. Practicing the loving kindness meditation and being loving and kind, you'll be able to have new experiences where in the past, these old experiences have kind of conditioned the mind to think this way. You need to have new experiences with people where you're practicing generosity and you're practicing loving kindness and you see that people are receiving that well. And now you have new experiences and you can uncondition the mind and let go of these situations in the past.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. Okay, Marta, you have a question?
Yes. So again, it's similar. Usually I try to understand the whole matrix of Buddha's teachings. So with this transforming the three poisons, those poisons were mentioned like in the right view, the second noble truth about the craving and desires, and then in 10 feathers, we have ignorance, and anger is also somewhere, going through all of those different concepts. And I just want to understand why this is like taken out again, right? Like why we are talking about this part separately.
Why are we talking about the three poisons separately from the 10 fetters?
Yes. Yeah, okay. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. So because the 10 fetters is the deepest level of detail, and there's very specific symptoms and very specific remedies for those, you need to also understand the higher level of the three poisons so you can understand the solutions that are targeting those as well. So that way you can gradually deepen your practice. So what you're left with the Four Noble Truths in the Eightfold Path is you've got these 8 individual factors that you need to be practicing. But then the 3 poisons help you to see what's really targeting the craving, what's really targeting the anger, what's really targeting the ignorance, so that you stay attentive to those things, as well as, of course, practicing all 8 factors of the Eightfold Path, which these things that I just shared with you are part of the Eightfold Path. But now you can see how the Eightfold Path is really working to get rid of the pollution of mind. It's not rules or commandments. It's not the Buddha trying to force you to do anything. There's a real purpose. This is what I'm describing today is the why. Why do we practice the Eightfold Path? What is this doing for us? Well, things like right speech is helping you eliminate craving, anger, and ignorance, right? Because when we're lying, there are certain things that the mind wants. It's craving something. And it thinks if it tells the truth that it's not going to get what it wants. So the mind lies, and that's coming from its craving, and it's coming from its ignorance. In some cases, it can come from its anger. But let's just take something like harsh speech. When the mind's being bitter and harsh and hostile to people, there's a craving there that the mind has, and it's not getting met. And now it becomes unskillful. And now that anger comes in and starts using harsh speech. And where this is coming from is the mind's ignorance. So when the mind arises this wisdom, we realize like, whoa, this right speech, it's not rules and commandments. It's actually helping you to get rid of your pollution of your mind. Even things like the 5 precepts, it's helping you to get rid of the pollution of the mind. That's what all the teachings of the Buddha are guiding you to be able to do, is reduce and eliminate these pollutions. And that's why as you're slowly bringing them down, you'll see some of the qualities of enlightenment shining through. It's like if there was the sun and there was clouds in front of the sun, and you start peeling back the clouds, slowly the rays of the sun are going to start shining through. And it's the same thing when you're gradually decreasing the pollutions, you're going to start seeing the rays of enlightenment. Some of the qualities of enlightenment start shining through. It's almost like a light bulb flickering as you're slowly reducing these pollutions. So that's why if you get the Eightfold Path well underway for a period of time, you'll start experiencing those enhanced qualities of mind called the jhanas. And that's like the light bulbs flickering and starting to give you glimpses of some of the qualities of enlightenment for a few minutes, a few hours, a few days. But then ultimately you're going to get discontent again because the mind's not fully purified. So this is helping you to be able to see how all this things that I've been teaching you so far is leading you to the elimination of these pollutions. Did you ever see the movie Karate Kid?
Not yet.
No? Okay. Well, for those of you guys that have seen the movie Karate Kid, sometimes the 3 poisons is almost like what we call the Mr. Miyagi moment, where this person was teaching this main character, Marta, how to do karate, but the main character didn't realize that's what he was learning. He was like waxing cars and painting fences and stuff like this. And he thought that this teacher was just getting him to do all his chores, where in reality, he was actually teaching him karate the whole time, but he didn't realize it. Right. So this is like the Mr. Miyagi moment of the teachings of the Buddha, because you learn all this moral conduct, you learn all these meditations, you learn all these things. And it's like, well, what's the purpose of all of this? Oh, it comes back to eliminating these pollutions. And that's what's going to produce the results in your day-to-day life.
Thank you. Thank
you. You're welcome. We have a question coming in on Facebook. I think the name is Elra. How would you apply this to the workplace where you can see certain people are not behaving in a correct way? It's the same exact thing. The first thing is to make sure you understand that having this idea of correct and not correct in your mind, that's just going to allow your ego to exist. And it's going to allow your mind to continue to cling to what you think is the right way, and everybody else is doing things the wrong way. So there are wise ways to do things in the world, and you will learn those wise ways. But it's important to not look at other people as, in any kind of negative way or any kind of right or wrong way, but instead just realize that you choose to do these things. But your goal in this path isn't to get other people to do these things. Your goal in this path is to train your mind to be completely peaceful and joyful. And that's not dependent on other people, whether they do these things or not. Sometimes what people teach you in traditions like this is to go out into the world and change everybody else. That'll never get you to peacefulness. So the same thing that I teach, like if there was someone at work who was gossiping and slandering or being a sexist or racist, like I shared with Marta about getting up and leaving and walking away or changing the subject, I would suggest the same exact thing because it's the same natural laws. The workplace doesn't change the natural laws and it doesn't change your practice. This is where you can get to a permanent practice where you're functioning in the same way in all settings and your mind can be at ease because you're just always practicing the natural laws. So you would like to be able to practice in the same exact way that you practice in your personal life, do the same thing in your professional life, and now your mind can be at ease. So that's why by learning the natural laws that the Buddha has to teach you, you'll be able to get to the point where your mind's in this permanent state of peace and joy because you're practicing these natural laws, you're not causing harm to others. But when other people are choosing to cause harm, it's not your role to teach them or tell them what they should or shouldn't be doing. That's just going to come from your craving and your expectations. It's coming from your own ego. And now when you put out any kind of craving, anger, and ignorance, it's just going to produce unwholesome results for you. This person's going to get angry. They're going to get bitter and harsh and hostile. Their ego is going to arise. They're going to start getting angry at you. So it's better to understand the Eightfold Path, practice that closely for yourself, and understand that not everybody else is going to be practicing that. And that's okay. That's their choice. Their decisions are going to affect them. Now, when it comes to like your life partner, when it comes to your children, things like this, the Buddha does teach you that it would be wise to help these individuals. But even that, you need to be able to do it in a way that you're not giving unsolicited guidance, that you're not demanding and controlling or forcing or putting expectations on these people. There's skillful ways to help the people around you, but you need to do the work first for yourself to build up your wisdom and train your mind to make sure that you're not trying to get other people to do these things based in your own cravings. So I would suggest you work on your own mind first before you attempt to share what these teachings are with anybody else. Okay, so I don't see any other questions anywhere. Let me just make one more round of looking, and I don't see anything on our platforms. So what I'm going to do is just in class, like I always do, which is say thank you. Thank you for your interest in learning these teachings. Thank you for your dedication and determination to learn and grow and develop on this path. As you would like to learn more, I'm going to be sharing the teachings next week of Chapter 9 from this book. Next week, Chapter 9 is titled, What is Gama and How Does It Affect Me? This is where we're going to dive in and talk about this natural law in detail. We've been talking about it all the way through the entire group learning program, but now we're going to go in and talk about it in detail. I'm going to explain the 4 types of Gama. I'm going to explain to you how to extinguish your unwholesome Gama so that you get to the point where you're only experiencing wholesome Gama. You're only experiencing wholesome results in your day-to-day life. So this is what I'm going to be teaching you next week. And then on Wednesday, we've already done our 4-part series on breathing mindfulness meditation, 4-part series on loving kindness meditation, and 4-part series on Buddhist chanting. This Wednesday, we're going to start with breathing mindfulness meditation, where I'm just going to guide you in a session, and then I'm going to open up to any and all questions that students have. The following Wednesday, I'll do loving kindness meditation, and then just open up to any questions that you guys have. And if you'd like to watch the recordings on these, you surely can, because now you understand perhaps the importance of practicing breathing mindfulness meditation and generosity, loving kindness meditation, and being loving and kind in your day-to-day life and cultivation of wisdom. So you're going to need to really practice these and bring these up and running in your day-to-day life. So again, thank you all for joining, and perhaps I'll see you guys in a future class. Be well and take care. Sawadee ka. Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.